Hello Spectrumites, and welcome to part 2 of our Autism Assistance Dogs Q&A. If you haven't watched part 1 yet, we'll provide a link in the description below and in the video. We strongly recommend you watch part 1 to gain more information and insights about Autism Assistance Dogs. And I am again joined by Laura Mundy from Laura Mundy Dog Training. And for those who haven't watched part 1, Laura is a positive dog trainer who helps train companion, therapy and assistance dogs, and will be answering specific questions about autism assistance dogs today. So thanks again, Laura, for joining us.
Thanks for having me again.
Yeah. All right, let's get right into it. Next question. Oh, it's about me. How often do I do training with a trainer, and how often do Benson and I just train ourselves? Well, it kind of varies based on the exercises I do, but pretty much it's been once a week, usually with a trainer nearby, or sometimes twice a week, depending on availability. At the moment, we're mainly working on basic cues and emotional regulation and impulse control. So I've got a nearby dog trainer who's doing the more general side of things. And then later on, I'll get Laura in to help me with the more specific assistance dog side of things. But again, it depends on the day, how both of us are feeling. I think it's important that we don't just do exercises for the sake of doing exercises. I think it's what we talked about in the previous video. It's about the bonding. So sometimes I might be able to fit in 5 exercises a day. Some other times I might only do 1 or 2. It really just depends on where we are. And I always want the exercises to be positive experiences for Benson and a positive learning journey. So I try not to push him too much. I just go at his pace. And also, if I'm not feeling good, I don't want to push myself to do it, because Benson will pick up on it and that might become a negative experience. So what are your experiences, Laura, in being an assistance dog trainer and the training process?
I think you picked up on some really good points there about doing it when you feel like you're in a mindset to do it. So it's a positive activity for both of you is really important. What we say with Minddog is try and go with a bit of a 50-50 rule. So 50% training with us, or like with a professional trainer, and 50% done yourself. And that training might just be like passive training throughout the day. You're just sitting there watching a movie and you're getting them to settle on a mat. Like, it doesn't have to be formal training. It just kind of happens throughout the day. And whether we like it or not, dogs are always learning. So it's not like it's a set, you're going to train from 9 a.m. till 10 a.m. and you're deliberately working on things, because you might just go out for a coffee and you give your dog a treat for laying down on their mat. That's training. They're always learning. So you're going to get what you reinforce. And so if you're reinforcing behaviours throughout the day, that behaviour is going to be stronger. They're always in training and always learning, whether we like it or not, 24/7.
That's a good point, isn't it? That it's very easy, and I know personally that for me, I interpreted training as you must go outside and do specific exercises like sit, drop, stay, all those sorts of things. But sometimes it's just getting him to do simple things like lie on the mat, or maybe we'll have a play. There's multiple things we can do, and it's like you said, you just do it at your own pace. And it's important for the dogs too, I feel, to have downtime, because it can be easy for them to get overstimulated and tired, and that's not a nice feeling for anyone to go through.
Yeah, you don't really want to do a really super formal pressured training all the time. Like even now, my guys were laying on a bed having a chew on an antler, so that's training. They're learning, even though I'm distracted on the computer chatting to you. They can still lay down and do something self-reinforcing while that's going on. So that's still learning. They're learning to kind of occupy themselves while I'm doing something else. So that's something I really try and encourage on my teams to focus on, just trying to make it part of their everyday.
I know that, like, you've said this to me, and my other trainer said this to me, it's about quality, not quantity. You might find that sometimes if Benson comes in, because that's the main thing we're working on the mat, he can focus for an hour. Sometimes it's only a few minutes, and I think most of the formal training, like the cues, only last a couple of minutes, because it's very mentally taxing for the dogs. You think about us doing homework or a really complicated maths question, it's a lot of intensity. So I feel like lots of breaks and fun stuff. Like, I've been told that I'm not, I need to make it more fun for us. I don't have to be so serious all the time. So, I think, getting that balance, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think you touched on a really good point where one day you might be able to lay down on a mat for 20 minutes or half an hour, and another day you might struggle for 2 minutes, and that's probably really good training I kind of then try and sit down with my teams and go, what do you reckon was going on for your dog that meant they could only do it for 2 minutes versus half an hour? And that's where other things influence behaviour. Have they had a stressful day? Have they just woken up and they're full of energy, so it's harder to sit still? Do they need to play first before they can relax? So that's things that I can then kind of be training my human side of the team rather than the dog side of the team to really be aware of their dog and what sets their dog up for success versus setting them up to not be able to succeed at what they want, and know that dog's personality or what impacts their mood at different times of day and that sort of stuff. So that's really important, because it's not like they're failing at laying down for 20 minutes. There's other factors that have influenced whether they're going to be able to do that.
So what I'm hearing is that you kind of act almost as a facilitator for the teams, so that to equip them with the skills in order to help each other, so then they can start incorporating some of their techniques in their home life.
It's a great way of putting it. Yeah, love it. That's really good. Might steal that. That's awesome. Yeah, no, you're exactly right, because it is. It's not just training the dog, but I think what's unique about the assistance dog with owner trained ones is that you guys are professional trainers, and we're putting a lot of pressure on you to really understand dogs and dog behaviour more than it would be the case if you got a pre-trained dog. So, there's a lot of stuff you have to learn about, and I'm trying to help, I guess, communicate for the dog and going, this is what they're trying to say, and then equip you with those skills to help them be successful throughout the training process more easily.
Well, that's great. Wow, thank you for that. And our next question that we have is more for you, Laura. Do autism assistance dogs come with instructions on how to keep their training or support skills on an ongoing basis?
Great question. I guess with the assistance dogs that we certify through Minddog, they get an annual public access test. So we're kind of expecting that each year their skills are maintained. But we also encourage, it's not just while you're a trainee getting that 12 months of training before your first public access test and getting qualified, but we expect that you continue doing maintenance training with a trainer kind of throughout the dog's life, because this will happen. I think it's important to not just look at a dog and go, okay, we do the public access test and they need to be able to sit, stay, come when called and that sort of thing. But things can happen. There might be a stressful event that happens, or you might move house, or something else might happen in your life that throws your dog's behaviour out a little bit, just like us. Stressful events happen and things might change. So you really need to keep on top of your dog's suitability as an assistance dog, because it's not given that it's going to be consistent. So you really do need to keep on top of the training, and we do expect that you stay on top of it and let Minddog know if anything changes or your dog's behaviour changes. It's a lifelong process. It's not just initial, they get done and then off you go and everything's going to be rosy for the rest of their life, because you just don't know.
I think that's a benefit too of having that 1 year public access test revision, because if there are any problems that crop up, then we can get the support to address those problems.
Yeah, and staying engaged with a trainer too. I mean, you get allocated an assessor and then you also have a trainer that's separate, but you could always get in touch with the assessor or get in touch with Minddog or chat to your trainer. It's a really holistic approach and we're all there to support you. So if anything happens, you can reach out to any of us and then we can make sure that you're getting the help and support that you need to still, be able to have your dog as an assistance dog out there helping you.
And is training a dog to be an autism assistance dog something that you can do yourself or as a family?
Because they're going to be assisting one person, it's great if that bond and relationship is strongest with that person that they're going to be assisting. But obviously, like with anything, it's really important to have your whole family on board and engaged in the process, because especially with young children, and this is something I'm working with more, so families with young kids that go to school and they're interested in having an assistance dog, what's important to know is that the primary handler is actually the parent, not the child. So the parent needs to be the one doing a lot of the training, because when the child's at school, they're a young child, they can't take that assistance dog into school with them all day and be responsible for them as a young child. The parent will take them home and just go and pick them up at the end of the day. So the assistance dog's actually functioning more outside of school hours. So the parent needs to be the one that's getting most of the training alongside the family. If there's other kids in the home, the kids need to learn to understand what the relationship is with the child they're working for. Everyone definitely needs to understand what's going on. but it's important that the dog has a relationship with everyone in the house too, because they're a family pet as well.
Well, that's the thing, isn't it? There might be some circumstances that mean that we can't be with the dog, so if they have a good enough bond with the rest of the family members, will make that process a bit easier. And I think even for me, sometimes managing my own anxiety around the training, it is helpful having another family member who knows the training and knows what I'm doing to kind of step in and give me a break when I need to. I think having the consistency is really important too, because if they don't understand what you're doing and there is a situation that comes up, that might be very confusing for the dog if they have someone doing slightly different things. So
that's another really, really good point. I didn't think of that, but it's something that I see a lot where I go into a family to work with them, and the person that's going to have them as their assistance dog's doing all the training, but then another member of the family walks out and encourages them to jump all over them for a pat, for example. So then the dog's kind of learning, oh, well, I jump up for a pat on people, and it's not what we want the dog learning. So if everyone in the home is consistent in what, feeding back to behaviours how we want them to be fed back, is really important. Otherwise it can almost be sabotaging the training a little bit inadvertently and creating issues. So a whole family approach is really, really important.
And can an assistance dog be part of the family and interact with the existing family dogs, or does it really need to be a solo dog and under the care of one or two people only?
Yeah, look, I guess the primary handler is, if it's a child, the parent, and then the young child, or if it's an adult, it's that person they're going to be assisting. But I think it's really important that the rest of the family don't feel ostracised. It's important that everyone has a relationship with them, but also recognises probably the primary attachment going on will be between that person that is going to be who the dog's the assistance dog for, and the dog. But I think it's definitely important that everyone has their own bond and relationship with the dog too, because they're living in the family, and everyone's going to want to enjoy patting and having affection with them and that sort of thing. But when a dog's working for someone, there will be times where they might get up and walk away from that person and go, well, look, I've got to go worry about the person I'm the assistance dog for.
And it's important for the dogs to have time to just be dogs too and socialise with other dogs and people and things like that, isn't it?
Exactly. Yeah, and I think with any relationship, you kind of need a break from each other at times too. You kind of don't want to 24/7 just be with the one person. And it's the same with dogs, and even with your assistance dog team. Sometimes you might just go, you know what, I need a bit of a break, and let your dog be a dog. Go to a park, let them run around. If they've got some mates that they love having a play with, if they're a young dog, let them go have play dates and hang out and do stuff. Yeah, just be a dog.
Absolutely. And I think, them knowing that they're not always having to work all the time is an important thing too, that they know that they can have breaks. So the next question is quite a big one, and we've talked about this, together quite a bit, but it is, what are some of the challenges having a dog?
Well, I guess just from a pet dog perspective, challenges would just be, it's a huge commitment. You've always got to be aware of where your dog is and their welfare and health needs, food needs and worming and vaccinations and who's going to look after them when you go away, all that sort of stuff. So just looking after their mental and physical health and well-being is a huge commitment to having any pet. From an assistance dog perspective, I guess it's another level, because you're going to be taking them out with you everywhere. So you really need to maintain their health to a whole new level, and their presentation, make sure their physical health and mobility's looked after, and that they've got no health concerns, and they're well groomed and presented. And so it's a huge responsibility having a dog, and having an assistance dog as well. It's a huge commitment.
I think for me personally, it's, issues with myself. I'm still having the same issues, like my executive functioning, for example. Sometimes I forget to take care of myself, let alone a dog. So, it's become, knowing that I'm caring for another being has made it even more important to track things. So I've done things like put reminders on my phone or on the whiteboard that he needs monthly worming and all those self-care stuff, which has helped me to remind myself, I need to go and brush my hair or get dressed or something like that. But that is something that, if you have executive functioning issues, I think it's important to factor that in when you're considering getting a dog, because dogs can't look after themselves and they do rely on us for daily care and things like that.
And some days I do hear from some teams that, they might be having a particularly rough day and they're really stressed, and sometimes our dogs can mirror that distress back at us if they're feeling frustrated or overwhelmed or overstimulated, and that can be really challenging for some teams, especially throughout the training process, in trying to cope with their dog kind of throwing more sometimes chaotic or high stress behaviour back at them, and they feel really, really overwhelmed by the process. So it's not easy, it's not like it's all just rainbows and lollipops and it's just training is a simple, easy process, and then out comes an assistance dog at the end of it that's going to make everything easy. It's a huge commitment. It's a lot of training. Behaviour is unpredictable. You'll have bad days where the dog's behaviour and your behaviour is really just not at its optimum, and it can be hard to cope with. So making sure you've got lots of support around you and strategies to cope with that, and a good team, even outside of the training side of things, family or even mental health support and clinicians that can help you cope with the process too as best as possible. Because I know that's definitely some feedback that I get. Some days are really hard.
Because it's not just yourself anymore that you're having to take care of. It's another whole being with its own sets of personalities, likes, dislikes, emotions, and that can be challenging to get used to, especially I've found with younger dogs, because I know with Benson, because he's still young, there's a lot of excitability there, and that excitability for me can be triggering for my anxiety. So often going out for walks and things has been very challenging, because when he gets excited I get stressed, and then he picks up on my anxiety. So it's that kind of balance between managing myself, but also factoring the dog in as well. It's very easy to get frustrated, with things internally through a training exercises and then accidentally projecting onto the dog. And I often worry that I'm doing something wrong. I think lots of practice and having a good trainer, and as you say, a support network really helps. Dogs are unpredictable because they're not robots. So there is a level of flexibility you have to have, and I have learned that over time, but it does take time and it will be frustrating. It won't just be an easy fix when you get the dog straight away and they have to settle in and stuff. But you find once I got into a routine now, things like motivating myself to walk is not as hard as it was a month ago when I wasn't used to it. It's just that the whole change in routine, flexibility issues that we struggle with in other areas of our life.
And making sure that, you've got a good trainer that can help you, I guess, understand what your dog's communicating to you too, because sometimes they can be throwing some behaviour back at us, like that emotional kind of mirroring behaviour, and we can quite often just label it, being humans as we are, of, my dog's naughty and disobedient and I'm going to tell them off. But a lot of the time our dog's actually just projecting back at us how we're feeling. We just need to understand what they're going through and give you those tools in your little toolbox to be able to manage that behaviour when it happens, and help calm both of you down if we need to. So younger dogs will tend to mirror back that arousal a lot more and not cope as well.
It's interesting because one of the biggest issues that I've had throughout my handling dogs and horses as well is, something not going the way I expected, and then having to accept that it didn't go the way I wanted and moving on and transitioning. I found that very challenging, but of course having a dog that's young and still learning and excited and things, I've had to learn strategies of letting go of that idea that I'd had, and also just trying to go in with a blank slate and go, I'm not going to try and fixate on anything today. I'm just going to see how he reacts and taking more of an observable approach is better rather than overthinking things. Because I think once you get into that fixation, it can be very difficult to let go of things we want to achieve. And I know a lot of people said this to me, and I know myself with the dogs I've had, it does get better. It may seem difficult at first, but it may not be like that for the whole time, and it will improve if you continue your training and continue what your trainers have recommended to you and things like that. I think it's important to realise it's all a journey, and it's hard to see the finished product, but you will get there eventually. Yeah,
like what you said then is pretty impressive, because it kind of shows that you've had to get that insight as well, and you've got the challenges that you find with Benson relating to challenges that you have in terms of not getting frustrated or not seeing things as perfect, and those sorts of challenges for yourself. But you can recognise that that's what you're experiencing and feeling, and then develop your own strategies in how you cope with that. And I think that's really important for other teams to recognise too, because it'll be different for everybody. the things that they find challenging will differ.
And it's a learning curve for both of us. Like Benson's taught me a lot too. So, I mean, him being there and me focusing more on like him has taken the pressure off of my emotions. So I've actually found myself doing probably more mindful meditative techniques through just getting into the present with him and observing his behaviour. And I've noticed out with going on walks, I'm not getting as anxious as I used to because it's more about him now. It's not all directed at me.
Yeah. And that, I guess, is kind of then falling into that benefit of an assistance dog, because it sounds like that's some really positive outcomes that introducing him into your life has brought you. The mindfulness, the breathing, the getting out and focusing on him, all that sort of stuff are some of the benefits we see of assistance dogs.
Yeah, he's an amazing boy. We all think. I think all dogs are amazing though.
Yeah, definitely.
And then the next question is a very good one, I feel. Can old dogs be taught new tricks?
I hear this a lot from just pet dog owners as well as the teams wanting their dog to be an assistance dog. Yes, in short, I mean, any dog can learn at any age. When I first started dog training about 15 years ago, the dog that I had was a 12-year-old deaf Maltese that had never trained for a second in his life, and I was doing this dog training course and needed to train a dog as part of my assessments, and I trained him with hand signals and some food. So I think it's the same as us. You can learn a new skill at any point in your life. You're always learning. It's not like you can only learn up until you're 6 months and then you're set in stone. From terms of like therapies and assistance dog, the only thing we factor into is the welfare. If they're old or older and they've got arthritis and pain and they physically can't go out and work and are saying, no, I can't because I'm in pain, then we would say it's unethical to have this dog working as an assistance dog. But that's really just from a physiological and welfare perspective, not from an ability to learn or perform that role. You can definitely be teaching at any age as long as it's ethical to do so, and they're not physically or emotionally harmed by the process of doing it, then yeah, definitely.
I think another important point to say too, it's not just learning, it's also sometimes unlearning a lot of behaviours too. Do you find that in your work?
Yeah, definitely can be. If some people have gotten a rescue dog with the hope of them becoming an assistance dog, there might be some previously reinforced behaviours there that we need to unlearn, or they might not have been exposed to particular things in the environment they've moved to. So some teams might have a working dog from a farm that they've rescued and now living in the city. So it's a lot of getting used to new environments. So there's that new learning as well. But yeah, you're right, there can be some problem behaviours that we need to help work through.
It's again a very individual basis, but all dogs have the potential to learn.
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah, we just have like health screens for dogs it used to be once they reached a certain age, but now we do it for all dogs of all ages, because obviously any dog at any age can have something that typically means that they're not well enough to work. I
think it's really great too, like that people are considering older dogs that they might already have, or even rescuing, because there's a lot of rescues that are perfectly beautiful dogs that need homes. But I found also personally getting a slightly older dog, he's still young, but getting one that was 11 months as opposed to 11 weeks will be a lot less difficult for me with my sensory issues, with my emotional issues, than having to go for 12 months of an excitable, little baby that's still learning about the world. So for me personally, going down the older dog route was better for my own mental health and ultimately Benson's.
Yeah, right. You don't have to go through that puppyhood, and especially for families that might have one or even more children in their home that are autistic, having a puppy in the home as well that is barking or scratching or urinating or mouthing at them can just be really, really overwhelming. And then it's hard for the parent too to manage having a puppy in the home. Whereas getting an older dog, you don't have to deal with all that puppy and adolescent behaviour. But then comes the challenge of knowing, where are you getting this dog from? What's their history? Have they got any problem behaviours that you just haven't seen yet that could potentially be risky? So you definitely need to do your homework on who this dog is and where they've come from and whether they're actually suitable. But an older dog, you really have a good snapshot of what their personality is like. So there's huge benefits of getting an older dog as well, because you see more of the end picture, and you can get to know them and bond with them and relate to them. We just ask that you've got to have had them for at least 6 months living with you before you can apply, so that you have that time to bond and get to know each other. A lot less work than a baby puppy. They're hard work.
Oh, boy, they are. Oh, boy. Now, you talked about well-suited dogs, and I know that we've talked about it being a very individual process about assistance dogs, but are there particular personalities in dogs or particular sort of no-nos or warning markers that you see for a potentially suitable or unsuitable dog?
Any dogs that seem really, really anxious and nervous and fearful of lots of different things is probably a bit of a red flag. So if a dog's really easily sound startled, for example, because obviously out and about in the general public, things can happen quickly and unpredictably. So we want to know that the dog's actually pretty resilient to things startling and appearing quickly, and then they're not going to have a propensity to react in a more aggressive kind of way to things that might happen quickly. So those sorts of things we're definitely looking for in a dog. Are they pretty confident, self-assured, resilient, chilled, able to cope with unpredictable things in the environment pretty quickly? I guess it's more that stuff that's more important than the skill stuff, because you can teach any dog to sit and drop and stand, and that's easy to do. You get some reinforcers out and you can teach any skill and behaviour, but you can't change the personality of a dog or really ingrained issues like anxiety or flightiness or sound sensitivity and that sort of stuff. So dog behaviour doesn't lie. So I can kind of go in and see a dog, and some dogs will clearly say, you know what, I don't want to do this. I don't want to leave the house. I don't want to put the jacket on. I find it really stressful and overwhelming. And those dogs are just clearly saying they don't want to do that job. It's very, very, very rare, but it does happen. So we want to see a dog that actually wants to do it.
I think my Benny's a bit too over-enthusiastic because he loves seeking out people and dogs. So I think for him, it will be teaching him to calm down a bit more, because I've had before Benson a very reactive, anxious dog, and I know that she would never have been suited to be an assistance dog. She probably needed almost a therapy dog of her own to kind of, help her out with her regulation. So, she'd do things like, she was on medication for anxiety. She didn't like men. She would, be reactive around dogs and lunge at them, and was very protective of me. So those sorts of behaviours would have been problematic had we gone into a really busy environment, and I think it just would have been unethical for her. And
it's the community we need to protect too. If we're sort of saying, okay, here's a jacket, here's an ID card that says you're an assistance dog, and out you go into public places and into shops and stuff like that, I think we have a responsibility to the community to make sure that these dogs are safe to be out there as well, because we're kind of all representing the overarching assistance dog community. I think if we're too relaxed and kind of let anybody go out there, then potentially it's going to have, kind of throw a bit of a negative light on the whole inclusion of and acceptance of assistance dogs in the community as well. So we need to make sure that you're kind of representing the need for assistance dog and what they can bring a person in a positive light. I think it's important to know that the dogs are definitely suitable to the role and safe to be out there.
And the second last question that we've got is, could another option be having a well-trained or appropriate dog for an autistic child as a companion?
If you would find the relationship with the dog just in the home beneficial to challenges that only occur in the home, or particularly worse in the home, then you can definitely get the same benefit from it. The only difference that the assistance dog label adds is that public access ability and being able to take them out into public and into places like that. So access in the community is challenging, then that's definitely a benefit that comes from having an assistance dog. But a well-trained companion dog in the home that might help with sleep or emotion regulation or things like that, then you can definitely have those same things done at home.
I think too it's important that the autistic individual in question has a say in what's happening, because maybe that will shed some light onto what they need as well, what might be an appropriate pathway for them. It's definitely a really, really crucial part of the process in making sure that what the dog's going to bring is going to be what the person wants. Sometimes it is thought, okay, I'll get a dog because everyone says that makes everything better now. But if a dog isn't actually helpful, so for some, the noise that the dog makes might actually be really distressing for a person in the home, or
the smell of them, or if they shed hair, having hair getting on them could be really distressing for them. Definitely need to make sure it is actually going to be beneficial and they enjoy having a dog around. But quite often I do have families contact me that go and they've seen maybe their child with a dog and seen how amazing and beneficial it was. So that kind of the process has already kicked off where they think this is really going to be beneficial because we've seen them with a dog and it was a really positive thing.
Thank you for that. It's an important topic. And the last question's kind of related to the previous one. And it is, will a service dog make us more stigmatised socially, and do the benefits outweigh the risks?
That's a huge question, and it's something I hear about a lot. It does label you as having something perceived as a disability that an animal could help improve your functioning with. So it does automatically kind of shine a bit of a neon sign on going, I have an assistance dog, and it can raise questions and people come up and ask inappropriate questions, unfortunately, because the general public can do that and go, what kind of assistance dog is it because you're not blind? And, because that's kind of what people look at it and think that that's what an assistance dog should look like. So it can throw out some extra challenges, but more often than not, I find that the benefits of having the dog outweigh the challenges that come with having a dog. But it definitely does make you more visible. Whenever you've got a dog, people notice and go, there's a dog in the supermarket. That's different. And then they look at the jacket and, things like that. And people do silly things and ask silly questions. It's just, unfortunately, the nature of what happens out in the general public. But yes, it does happen and it is challenging. But we hope that the benefits outweigh the challenges.
I think it will vary too with autistic individuals where we are on our journey to self-acceptance, because if we have a positive autistic identity and we're proud of our neurodiversity and things, we're probably going to be more okay with people asking directly about the assistance dogs because it is related to our autism and our different wiring. But for example, if you're a high masker and not quite ready to tell people more about it, or maybe you're still working out yourself, maybe you need a bit more time to accept yourself, because I reckon even at the age of 13, I might not have been okay with having a dog at school, just from the fact that I was still trying to understand who I was. Whereas now, I got Benson to help mark me as someone who was different, because I find it very hard unmasking in public, and the anxiety that causes is so much more debilitating than, for me, the possibility of someone asking an inappropriate question in public. That's a good opportunity for awareness building and educating the general public about assistance dogs. But I think in terms of the question about stigmatized socially, I think it may or may not help. It may make it worse. It may not. I think for me personally, had I had an assistance dog at school, it wouldn't have affected me or the rates of bullying, because I was already different to begin with, and people knew that there was a difference with me. So I don't think it would make you more stigmatized. Maybe it's an opportunity for kids to see the positives in having support at school and educated about having assistance dogs and service dogs. But I think it is a very personal journey. I think that's a question that will vary for every autistic individual, and we all have different reasons for getting an assistance dog. So again, those benefits of having it will be different for everyone. But for me, having the ability to unmask and even just do things like feeling justified to sit in a disabled spot, because I don't look autistic, people sometimes give me looks that suggest they think, what right do you have to sit in a disabled spot? But having Benson as kind of my backup and sort of support crew, it's more obvious to people that I need additional support. So for me, that's an unmasking process. Like you said, everyone's journey and experience and challenges and everything's going to be so unique and different, and it will vary throughout the lifespan, and it will vary day to day sometimes too, of what's challenging and what's not for some people. And getting used to the process. I think when you're very new to having an assistance dog will be very different to when you've been out working with them for a year, 2, 3 years down the track. That's the thing as well. We can't kind of go, well, an assistance dog is going to be this concrete thing that's going to improve this, that and the other in a known way, because it's really going to depend on so many variables, and it's not going to be for everybody. It'll be for a lot of people, and it'll also not be for a lot of people.
it's just a matter of knowing yourself and whether it's going to work for you.
Oh, absolutely. I think that's really important, and I totally agree with everything you said. Well, that wraps up our Q&A about autism assistance dogs. Thank you so much, Laura, for taking your time out of your busy schedule to talk to us about these important issues. And just in case people didn't see your previous video, where can people find you online for more information about what you do?
Yeah, so just my website, lauramundy.dogtraining.com.au, or Facebook. Got a Facebook page as well, just Laura Mundy Dog Training. Definitely more than happy for anyone to message me or email me through either means, and more than happy to chat about this topic more, because it's so interesting and very important topic.
Yeah, I really enjoyed the conversation too. I've learned a lot, so thank you.
Anytime.
Yeah. Well, thank you everyone for watching, and we hope you enjoyed the video, and we'd love to hear your thoughts, and so feel free to comment below, and if you like the video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe for more updates, and to help us create more videos like these in the future, we'd really appreciate it if you could support us on Patreon, and you get benefits like early access and even able to suggest topics for videos. So thanks again, and we'll see you next time. Bye.